Hakadosh Boker Or Shavua Tov Chodesh Tov Hanukkah Sameach. Yeah, the Masechet Nedarim Daf Samech Aleph Amud Aleph 61a1. Okay, we were speaking about the entire concept about what happens right now if a person made a oath, right, a kunam, upon himself that he's not going to come and he's not going to benefit from wine this year, and then it became a leap year. So do we say that since it becomes a leap year, it's going to be a sur also in the extra month or not? And we went back and forth, and then we wanted to say that I would have thought to say that we go after the majority of the years, and therefore it does not, the majority of the years does not have a leap year. But Kamash Malan, that we do go after the leap year, and therefore the leap year, the extra month, is going to be prohibited as well. And now we're going to be starting 5 lines down, Ibai Lehu, in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Ibai Lehu. So we're asking the following question. Amar Yain Shani To'em Yovel Mai. What happens if a person comes and he says, right, Kunam Yain, that he's going to taste from wine for this Yovel? Okay, which we're going to have to understand what does that mean. Shnata chamishim kilifnei chamishim or kilachar chamishim. So basically, remember that we were speaking about until now the day, the week, right, the month, the year, right, the 7 years, right, the Shemitah, and we're going to Yovel. Yovel is 50 years. So that's it. He's not allowed to drink wine until Yovel. Now the question is, the 50th year of Yovel, is that considered kilifnei chamishim, like the previous machzor, which means like the previous cycle, and therefore it's going to be prohibited, or lachar shoshim, afterwards, and therefore it's going to be prohibited. So Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof. The time we learned in the Braita, plukta the Rabbi Rabbanan. This is actually a machlok between Rabbi and Rabbanan. You're going to sanctify the 50th year because it's Yovel Hi Tielachem. Now, when it says Yovel Hi, which is a continuation of the pasuk, it's coming obviously to exclude something. So Shnat Chamishim Atamoneh. What does that mean? You're not going to come, only the 50th year is sayach to the previous cycle. You're not going to count the 51st year, because that's already the next cycle. So from here we say, Yovel eno ole linyan shavua, that the Yovel is not considered the first year of the next Shemitah. Because remember, Shemitah is a 7-year cycle. So if it's 7 times 7, it's 49. So 49th year. The 50th year is Yovel. So he comes and he says, Yovel is not considered the first year of the next Shemitah cycle. Rabbi Yehuda says, Yovel oleh minyan shavua. It does. It is actually the first year of the next Shemitah cycle, right? And therefore, that's also the next Yovel, obviously. So it comes out that according to Dat Chachamim, Yovel is actually considered the last year of the previous cycle, and therefore it's going to be Asur. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, right, the Yovel is going to be considered the first year of the next cycle, so therefore it's like the next one. So it's a machloka between Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim. We found here that there's a machloka between Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim. Do we count the 50th year, the previous cycle, which is the last of the previous cycle, or the first one of the next cycle, and therefore it's going to be permitted? So therefore that's what's going to be the machloka. So Amrulu the Rabbi Yehuda, they went and they told Rabbi Yehuda, Hare Omer, it says in the Torah, Shesh Shanim Tizra Sadecha. Okay, so which means that you're going to come and you're going to plant your field for 6 years. And on the 7th year, it's going to be Shabbat Shabbatoni Elaretz. So it's mashma that the Shemitah is always going to have 6 years permitted beforehand. Now here, it's only going to be Chamesh. Why? Because the Yovel, according to you, which is basically the first year of the next year, right, of the next cycle, is also prohibited. Right? One more time. According to you, it's going to come out that the Yovel is going to be prohibited, right? Also in plowing. That means just like the Shemitah is going to be prohibited, so to Yovel. So now, if Yovel is the first year of the next cycle, so then in 1 second, you're not going to have 6 years of planting and then Shemitah. In that cycle of 7, you're going to have 5 years. Because you had Shemitah, you're not allowed to do anything. You had Yovel, which is the 50th year. Remember, Shemitah is every 7 years. So 7 times 7 is 49. Then the 50th year is Yovel. And that's also going to be prohibited. Now, we just said that Yovel... people that they can't do stuff. I want to say, very good, but that's what they're asking. They're asking, but Richard, you're asking from logic. They're asking from the Bible. You understand? Meaning the Torah comes and tells you that there has to be 6 years of plowing and planting and 1 year of Shemitah. So according to them, 1 second, according to you, you're going to have 2 years, right? Which is nothing. And since Yovel is the 50th year, is the first year of the next cycle, you're only going to have 5 years. And then it's going to be Shemitah again. So what's going on? It can't work according to the Torah. So answers Elmaleh, he told them, L'divrichem, and according to you. Harei Omer, it says, Ve'asat tevuah lishlosh hashanim. You have to make the tevuah for 3 years. Remember, when they finished on the 6th year, it's actually going to be for 3 complete years because they have to plant and plow, and that's going to be good enough for the 6th year, for the 7th year, which you can't do anything Shemitah, and the 8th year for the beginning of the year until they catch up and they're able to plant and plow and everything until they start getting fruit. So the 6th year has to make produce for 3 years, right? Now he comes and he says, 1 second, but according to you, that 6th year is going to have to make it for 4 years. Why is it going to have to make it for 4 years? Because Shnat HaChamishim is also going to be until the Katzid. So it's going to be 4 years exactly. Why? He says the 6th year is usually for the 6th, 7th, and 8th until the Katzid. Now he says, according to this is in every single Shemitah. What about now by Yovel? When you're going to do the Shemitah before the Yovel, it has to make now 6th, 7th, and for the Yovel, and then the next year, the beginning of the next year. So he says that's going to be 4 years, not 3 years. That means if you're already coming and attacking me from the Torah, I'm also going to attack you from the Torah. Because according to you, what do you say? You said that it always makes the produce for 3 years, right? He says it's not true. Because according to you, in the year of Shemitah, you're going to need it for 4 years. Everyone understood the logic. According to your words, when it says, so obviously we're talking about the other years of the Shemitah. Dilinami, so too, the same thing with me. It's going to be the other years, right? So it says over here, so we go like Rabbanan, yeah? So he says, so because of that, what happens is that Rabbi Yehuda actually answered up his answer, that he was basically just saying, just like you guys had to apply it to one halacha, I also, meaning part of the pasuk, you had to apply it, that it was the other cycles and not this cycle, so too I also applied it to other cycles, even though we do paskin le chachamim, which the chachamim say that the 50th year, right, is not going to be olel minyan shavua, so it's not going to be part of the 7, meaning you have the 7 cycles of 49, right, which is 7 times 7, the Shemitahs, and then the 50th year is 50. That 50th year is no man's land. It's 50. It's like a pasek, right? You heard pasek. Yeah, you do a pasek. Now that you do a hefsek, a separation, now you start a new count of 49 until the next time, and then again you get 50. The truth is much more logical to say that, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, what would come out is that you always have 49s, and that means every single time it's going to be 98 years, meaning it's never 100 years. It's not we're going 100 years. It's always 98 because you do 49 and the 50th year is already the first of the next cycle. So then again, you're going to have another 40. You understand? Like you never actually have 50. Here, you're actually having 50 because you have 50 and then 50 because you have 49. 50th year is no man's land, which is called the Yovel. And then the year 51 is already the first of the next cycle of the 7.
That's not okay. Yovel. That's not the beginning.
Now we have the 2 dots where the 2 dots is coming and saying, right, on the bottom, where we said a person comes and he says that he makes a vow, he's not going to eat something until Pesach. So is it until the beginning of Pesach or until the end of Pesach? So says the Gemara, so there we saw a machloka between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Meir says until Pesach comes, and then Rabbi Yosef says until it finishes Pesach. So says the Gemara, are you going to tell me now that Rabbi Meir savar, lo me'ayel inish nafshe, does Rabbi Meir hold that a person will not come and put himself into l'sfeika, into a safek, right? Samechala from that 61b. Which means, do we come and he say that a person will never put himself into a safek? And that's why when he comes and he said there's no safek that I meant before Pesach, and Yosef holds that a person will put himself into a doubt. Meaning right now, what did you just say? You said he's making a neder, he's not going to taste wine until Pesach. Now when he said until Pesach, does that mean until Pesach passes or until Pesach arrives? So it's a machlok between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosef. So says the Gemara, are you going to tell me now that according to Shittat Rabbi Meir, a person will never put himself into a safek, and therefore Pesach was not included? And according to Rabbi Yosef, a person will put himself into a safek, and therefore Pesach was included. Well, meaning we have a contradiction. A person got married, right, to 2 different women, and he has 2 groups of daughters. One, right, of the 2 banot from one wife, and then he has another 2 banot from the second wife. So he's got 2 daughters from one wife, 2 daughters from another wife. Yeah? Ve'amar, and he comes and he says, Kidashti et biti agdola, ve'en yodea im gadola shebegdolot, im gdola shebektanot, ve'im ktana shebegdolot, shegdola min agdolot, shektanot, so kulan asurot. Basically this, right? Again, one more time. He's got 4 daughters, right? 2 from Mrs. A and 2 from Mrs. B. Yeah, you miss those days, no, Richard? You could get married to 2 wives, yeah? So what happens is you have 2 Yeah, 2 from the older, right? 2 from Mrs. A, 2 from Mrs. B. Now, in each one, you obviously have an older and a younger, correct? You have an older and a younger Mrs. A, an older and younger Mrs. B. Now, when you say, I also got my eldest daughter married, which one is it? Is it the eldest of the Mrs. A, eldest of Mrs. B, or is it the eldest of all 4? Right? So look what he says here. Now, he doesn't know. Is it, right, the Gdolah Shebegdolot, which means the older one of Mrs. A, Gdolah Shebektanot, which means the older one of Mrs. B, Vim Ktana Shebegdolot, or the Ktana of the Bnot Gdolot, which is the first one, which is Gdolah Mina Gdolah Shebektanot, which is actually older than the second pair, which means like this. He had 2 for Mrs. A, then he had 2 for Mrs. B. So when he now comes and he says the Gdolah doesn't mean the second one of Mrs. A, because she's still older than the other 2 of Mrs. B. You understand? So I mean, you got here a lot of different, and that's why Kilu, she's Gdolah. So you've got here a few different choices here. You've got 3 different girls, right? That you don't know. Is it the older of Mrs. A, older of Mrs. B, or the younger of Mrs. A? Those are 3 women out of the 4 daughters, which will be prohibited. It cannot be for sure the youngest daughter, because he didn't do the Gdolah, right? So therefore she's the Ktanav, the Ktanot. So for sure it's not her. So the 4th daughter is, so it says, Kulan Asurot. All the daughters are prohibited. Chutz min Ktanash v'Ktanot, except for the youngest one of the youngest, right? These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef comes and he says, Kulan mutarot, all of them are going to be permitted. Chutz min Gdolah shebegdolot, except for the Gdolah of the Gdolot. That means according to Shitat Rabbi Yosef, everyone's permitted. The only one which is prohibited is the eldest of the eldest, meaning the eldest of Mrs. A. That's it. That's the only thing. So you see from here that Rabbi Meir says that a person puts himself into a safek, and therefore that's why all 3 out of the 4 were prohibited. And according to Rabbi Yosef, a person will not put himself in a safek, so therefore it was only the number 1 which was prohibited, the eldest of the eldest daughter. She's the only one that's prohibited. Everybody else is permitted. So there's a contradiction. Right? You just told me that a person puts himself into a safek or not. We wanted to make that a machloka between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosef. That Rabbi Meir says that a person does not put himself in a safek, and according to Rabbi Yosef, he does. Over here, we see in this case of the marriage, it was the exact opposite. So Amar Rabbi Chanina bar Avdimi Amar Rav, says Rabbi Avdimi bar Avdimi, read name of Rav, Mukhlefet Hashita. The shitot of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosef and our Mishnah were actually mistaken. They were swapped. Rabbi Meir is the one that says you have to wait until the end of Pesach, and Rabbi Yosef says until Pesach. Because according to Rabbi Yosef, you'll never put yourself in a tzavek. According to Rabbi Meir, you will. And that's in accordance, right? That's actually parallel to what he paskin in the other case of the marriages. So therefore it makes sense. So says the Gemara, Tanya, we have a proof to this. Remember, sometimes Tanya is a question, and sometimes Tanya is proof. Tanya is, we learned in a Braita, but sometimes you ask it like as a question. Tanya, we learned in a Braita, A, B, C, D. How could you tell me that? And sometimes Tanya is benichuta. Tanya benichuta means is that you're doing it as if to say it's a proof. So Rashi usually is the one that's going to tell you what it is. And Rashi, if you look at Rashi, it says Tanya benichuta. Everyone sees Rashi on the left side, right before where it says matlitin. It says Tanya benichuta. Benichuta means this is not a question, it's a proof. Because you're saying it benichuta means like nicely. So you're not a bitmiya as a question, right? You're not as a, right? So he says, Vatanya, we learned in a Braita, this is the general rule. Kol shezmano kavua, anything that the time is going to come kavua. For example, Pesach is kavua. Ve'amar, and you say ad lifnei, until that time. Rabbi Meir says ad sheyetzeh, means that until it finishes. And Rabbi Yosef says ad sheyagia, until it actually comes that time. So you see from here, right, the same machloket that we just see in this Braita is actually our Mishnah if we flip it. Meaning we just flip the Mishnah that Rabbi Meir says until it finishes Pesach, and Rabbi Yosef says until it becomes Pesach. So to this Braita is the exact same thing. And that according to Rabbi Meir, ad lifneh, so says Rabbi Meir until it finishes, and Rabbi Yosef says until it gets to Pesach, until it gets to that time.
How do we know you don't do it the other way around? Why are we?
There's the Mishnah, Samechalef Amubet in the middle. Ad akatzir, a person comes and he says he's going to make a neder, he's going to prohibit himself, whatever it is, whether it's wine, whatever the case is, until the reaping, right? Until he comes and he starts bringing all the tevuah, right? Ad abatzir, or of the anavim, the grapes. or Adam Asik, or until the olives. Remember that in Hebrew, it's not like in English. English, one language, right? One terminology is used for all three. You reap, and that's what it means. You reap everything in. But in Hebrew, each one is a different terminology. So katzid, shata katzid is tavua, is grain. But seed is the wine, the grapes. And the mosek, right? The same thing. When you're going to come and you're going to do the olives, it's mosek zetim, right? Botzer chitim, right? It's the shata betzira. Each one, right, is no, it's a reish and nun. There's a difference, yeah. Yeah, so he says Ada Batzid or Ada Masik. So he says Eno Asur Ella Ad Shiagia. It's only going to be prohibited until it came to that time and not afterwards. Okay?
So the same question applies.
The what? Zeha Kelal. Yeah, this is a general rule. Well, sorry. Right? Zeha Kelal. This is a general rule. Shezmano Kavua. If it has a fixed time, for example, Pesach, which is always going to be 7 days. And you said Ad Shiagia, Asur Ad Shiagia. It's going to be prohibited until it comes there. Amar Ad Shiehe, Asur Ad Shietze. So he says Ad Shiagia means, right? When you say Ad Shiagia, it means Ad Shiagia Otomura. But if you say Ad Shiehe, so then it's going to be until that time. Okay? So he says Asur Ad Shietze. So you see from here, because it's actually a little bit different than the previous Mishnah. Yeah, you're saying, you're saying exactly. You're saying Ad Shiagia, right? Or it's not just Ad, or like what we said beforehand. Okay? So now he comes and he says, right? Ad Shitechshach or Ad. Okay, fine. So now he comes and he says, Ad Shiehe Asur Ad Shietze. But if it's not going to be a fixed time, Ben Amar Ad Shiehe, Ben Amar Shiagia, whether he said Ad Shiehe or Ad Shiagia, Eno Asur Ela Ad Shiagia. It's only going to be prohibited Ad Shiagia until it comes this time. Okay? Next. Ad Kites. A person says until the summertime. Yeah? Or he says Ad Shiehe Kites. So what does that mean? Ad Shiatchilu Am Lachnis Bekalkalot. Until they're going to come and bring in with the baskets. Because when they bring in with the baskets, that's Tchilat Kites. Right? That means basically since the time of kites is not, it's not Kavua. Say somebody's going to say winter. Well, what's winter? In Miami, winter is very different than, we just started winter. You understand? It lasts for 3-4 days, and then that's it. But what is winter exactly? You understand? What is winter? The first snowstorm? Is it the when it's already 10 centimeters of snow? Is it what or maybe you don't even need snow, it's just freezing cold, right? What exactly is that? So it's the same thing with kites. So he says, Ad she'avor kites, until it finishes kites, Ad she'akpilu hamiktzot, until, right, they're going to come and they're going to, the ones that they come and they're going to put away their knives and everything of the that they cut, they do all the reaping. So when they put away their knives and they put away their utensils, that means it's already finished the summertime. That's it. They're done for the season. Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara. Tana, we learned in a Braita. Kalkala she'amru, when the rabbis say that until the kites, so we're starting mamash at the last point of the Mishnah. The last point of the Mishnah, we said was the person comes and makes an eder until the kites. So he says, and we said until he gets a kalkalot. What is the kalkala? Kalkala is a sal, is a basket. Okay, so he comes and he says like this. He says, "Kalkala shamru, kalkala shel te'enim, v'lo kalkala shel anavim." It's going to be a kalkala of figs and not of a basket of figs and not a basket of grapes. Why? Because the te'enim, they're going to be immediately taken by kites, but the anavim, they're going to be taken, right, only with a knife. So it's not considered, right, kites, but rather chaticha be'alma, meaning that the way that they cut, right, is very different. The way that they cut, whether it's going to be figs or they're going to be cutting grapes. Grapes is only going to be done, right? They're not going to be taken by the hand, only by a sakin. So therefore, it's going to be by the knife. So therefore, it's not considered kites, but it's going to be considered cutting because you have to cut it down. The figs are taken down with their hands. They come and they pluck them down, right? That's done with their hands. So that's what it's called. Which one?
Are we including?
So says the Gemara, 1 second. How could that be? Because we just, if a person comes and he makes a neder from perota kites, it's only going to be asur in te'anim, and it's mutar ba'anavim, because they are not considered perot kites, meaning grapes are not considered summer fruits. It's only figs, right? Rashbag says, anavim bichal te'anim. No, they're the same thing. So you see from here, 1 second. Here it comes out that it's actually a machloket. Are grapes considered the summer fruits or not? Right? There's a machloket. Huh? Well, it's machloket. Yeah, you're testing to the machloket. Chazak baruch. Yeah, it's a machloket. So therefore, the machloket between Rashbag and Tanakama. So what's the reasoning of Tanakama? My Tama did Tanakama. What's the reasoning of Tanakama? So Kasavar, he holds Te'anim mikatzetzam biyada. Anavim lo mikatzetzam biyada. The Te'anim you do with your hand. The grapes you don't do with your hand. He says when you're going to come and they become dry, you're also going to do it with your hand. So the fact that you're going to do it with your hand when they become dry, right? So therefore, it's considered perot hakayitz because it's not. That means there is circumstance that you actually do it with your hand and not with a knife. So the fact that you do it also with your hand when they, for example, they dry up. So therefore, it is considered perot hakayitz. Huh? That's according to Rashbag. So now says the Gemara, the two dots, where the two dots says until the Avor Kaitz, until they come and they put away their knives. So Tana, we learned in a Braita, which means they're going to be mekapel, or the majority of the people, they're going to put away their knives and they're going to put it for the next year. So the second that they start doing that, that's already considered, right, that it's like the next year, Bezrat Hashem. And we continue tomorrow.